Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again. So as part of the Ben Griffin reaction, there's also a couple of article headlines, that I was asked to could have a read of and react to those, and also another separate video whereby Ben goes out on a Veterans for Peace tour in Northern Ireland, I think it is. So let me read through this first one, give my thoughts and stuff on it. Some of the stuff he's already spoken about in that first interview that I did, reaction that I did of Ben Griffin on the HL podcast with Hugh Keir. So this one here, this article heading's got attacking civilians in their homes. I was deployed to Baghdad in 2005, so this is obviously Ben Griffin speaking, ex-22 SAS operator. Ben was deployed to Baghdad in 2005 alongside the American Special Forces, he said. In Iraq, we were told we were out to catch high-value targets. What we were actually doing was attacking civilians in their homes. We would sneak up to someone's house in the middle of the night, armed with rifles and pistols, explosives and grenades. We would drag them from their beds, put the men in one room and the women and children in the other, Ben said. So, I mean, man, if that's his experience, but yeah, there's likely going to be the HVTs that you're looking to try to capture and or kill, the high-value targets. I think I've mentioned before in other videos, they've likely got families, loved ones as well. This case here, it sounds like Ben is adamant that the people that they've grabbed are purely civilian. And if that's the case, and that's been his experience, along with the other, he says in his interview, there were 30 other guys, 30 other guys there, that from what I got from his interview with Hugh Keir, that didn't seem to be concerned that what they were doing was wrong in terms of going into to get the people, the occupants of the homes that they were designated or targeted to go and collect from there. So, yeah, I mean, for me, my reaction to this is full respect and credit to Ben for having the courage to go out and put this stuff out there. I think he mentioned on the HL podcast that he thought he was going to end up in prison, but the military ended up discharging him. And yeah, just massive credit to him for having the strength to stand up and say, this is what I saw, this has been my experience, and I don't think it's right, and I'm not deploying again, or I'm not going to serve as part of this unit again. So massive respect and credit to him, to anybody who stands up for what they believe is right. My thoughts are that there's 20 or 30 other people, 20 or 30 other individual operators, based on what Ben has shared in his interview, that it sounds like nobody else put up their hand and said, hey, what we're doing is wrong. I do acknowledge when Ben spoke about on the interview that the CEO came out and says he was concerned that they were becoming the secret police of Baghdad, and those types of things started to play on Ben's mind from his interview with Hugh Keir on the HL podcast. So yeah, I've got nothing but respect for him. I will put the links to these full articles. I haven't gone through and read the full articles. I've just read these, or I'm just reading these screenshots. This is the first one, and I'll bring up the second one next. So that's my thoughts on it. Massive respect for Ben, for not only his service, but also for having the courage, bravery to put his face on camera and say, hey, this is my issue with what we were doing over there, and this is why I don't want to go back. I think that's, says a lot about the guy. Whether he's right, whether he's wrong, whether he's misinterpreted things, whether he's made assumptions or whatever, not my place to cast any judgment on, other than I have a great deal of respect for him and for anybody that's willing to put themselves out there and stand up for what they believe. So that's his first one. We'll have a look at the second one. All right, let's get that up and full screen. All right. So this part here, he told a Stop the War Coalition press conference in London that since the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, UK Special Forces had operated within a joint US-UK task force that had been responsible for the detention of hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals in Afghanistan and Iraq. I think I heard him speak about this in the HL podcast as well. The primary mission of the task force in Iraq was to kill or capture high-value targets. However, the task force often detained non-combatants. So there's a bit of repetition from what he's spoken about. He said he had not himself witnessed torture or mistreatment. So I remember him talking about that in the podcast. And again, credit to him for acknowledging that he himself didn't witness torture or mistreatment of non-combatants or of the people that they detained. But he added, I have no doubt in my mind that non-combatants I personally detained were handed over to the Americans and subsequently tortured. So again, I think I touched on in the reaction, big, bold claim. I think in the interview he spoke about that there were some people from his unit that told him that they had seen it. So, or words to that effect anyway. Apologies if I got that wrong, but I seem to recall him saying something like that. Again, credit to him for acknowledging he never witnessed it himself. He does say that he has no doubt, though, in his mind, that non-combatants that he detained or that he was a part of in detaining were handed over to the Americans and subsequently tortured. Big, bold statement, however you want to slice and dice that. But again, credit to him for bringing this stuff out. I'm not sure why he would have thought he was going to go to jail. Maybe he was just joking when he said that. Or maybe for insubordination, or not insubordination. I don't know what the term would be. Maybe something to do with him refusing to redeploy as part of being a soldier in Her Majesty's armed force, or the King's armed forces. So, yeah, it just sort of repeats some of the stuff in that and there, like what I've been doing, and sad if that is what's happened. But again, he's the only one that I know of that's come out and said this stuff in and around things that he was involved in that caused him to question what it was that he was doing. And I think in the first HR podcast, I was around questioning the morality of what they were doing. And ultimately, it led to him not choosing to not redeploy and choosing to no longer be a part of the regiment. So credit to him and respect to him for that. So anyway, that's this one. We'll pause this here and then we'll get into the final piece of reaction. Oh, actually, sorry, there were a couple of questions. One of them I have no idea the answer to. So Ben asks a question, or no, he says during the first podcast that he does with Hugh Keir that the torture system was invented by somebody. And there was a question that come through to me, which I just don't know the answer to. Who invented that system, that type of torture and that sort of thing? I have no idea. I'm definitely not qualified to answer that question, so apologies about that. And the other one was around, did Australian SAS troops ever capture and or torture people? And did we slap people around when they did raids or whatever? I can't speak for Afghanistan and those sorts of things because I didn't deploy there. In 2003, there were a couple of little instances which I didn't enter in the room on. A couple of the other guys from the other vehicle jumped off when we saw what we believed to be a little comms tower, and it was. They went in there and caught a couple of guys that were literally racked out asleep middle of the day in their little hut. And the guys went in. You go in hard and you go in aggressive, but you're not going in there and you're not butt stroking anybody in the face or, shooting people in the leg that are unarmed and that sort of thing, which never happened. So I can only speak from my time and my deployment and what I observed and experienced. Guys were professional. They went in hard and fast, dragged people out for questioning, but then that's when we got into a contact when those, probably the bigger contact that we had during that time in 2003, where there were multiple vehicles and then guys dismounting, lobbing mortars, firing RPGs towards us, small arms, etc. And then we, I think the guys secured those two, removed the weapons obviously that were there, and then we launched our attack and fighting back against numbers wise a larger force, but training, skills, weapon superiority and all that sort of thing not as dominant as what we had and how we were equipped and trained, etc. So other aspects to that, part of the training and or if you're doing live jobs, you do go in hard and aggressive, but you're not going in there, like I said, starting to slap people around, punch them, kick them, whatever the case might be. You're going hard, but you are firm with them when you're grabbing them, and you get them, you need them to comply. Get on the ground, their face is into the ground, and you secure them. Secure their hands wherever, behind their back, wherever you need to secure them, and then you go through what you need to do. But you're not being, you're not pulling out a chair and saying, here, have a seat here. Like, yeah, you might pull out a chair if you need to, but you're moving them in no uncertain terms so that they know where it is that they're going. But I never witnessed anybody banging or slapping anybody around. And to the other part, did SAS, Australian SAS troops, the squadron that I was a part of during our deployment, I never witnessed anybody torturing or hurting anybody. I didn't, the guys that I was with didn't in my troop and in my squadron. And as far as I know, the men that were part of the squadron overall, so the water operators with their troop, the free fallers in their area of operations where they were deploying, we each had our own areas out in the Western Desert. Never heard any concerns from any of the other operators within the troop in terms of mistreatment of, enemy combatants and or suspects, in terms of the people that were there and or that may have surrendered. And I've touched on that earlier as well in other videos, like, if we wanted to do anything malicious, sinister, bad, evil, we could have done it quite easily. But we didn't, because everybody's got one of these at the end of the day. For me and my perception and my experience, everybody's got a conscience. And as far as I know, everybody's got a mirror at home. So they need to look at themselves in the mirror eventually. And if you don't like what you see looking back at you in terms of the things that you have done or that you've witnessed or that you've stood idly by and allowed to happen, I could imagine how they could start to eat away at anybody. So, that's my response to those. Hopefully that helps answer that. So anyway, we'll park this up here, and then I'll do probably a separate video and then look to try to connect it together in terms of the reaction to Ben Griffin's tour on that Veterans for Peace in that Northern Ireland piece where he's giving a bit of a presentation. So we'll come back for that. Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again. So here we're about to kick into this portion of the video whereby Ben Griffin is speaking to a group of people. I haven't watched this part. I just skipped it towards looking at the timestamps on the bottom and could see this portion here. And the person who sent me through this video was kind enough to put a link in there as well. So here, this is a few years ago. It says here, on the 23rd of October 2014, 8 members of Veterans for Peace UK started a 4-day journey across the north of Ireland in order to meet people and organisations drawn from communities which they had previously been deployed against as soldiers. In the third of 4 films, they meet Republican ex-prisoners in Belfast. So, yeah, we'll jump into this one. I've moved it forward or slightly before Ben is about to speak to the group of people that they're there visiting at this time. So let's jump into this.
I'm going to give a presentation that I give to younger people in the UK to try and let you understand why someone would join the army. From a young age, I was fascinated by the military, remembrance parades, with the poppies and the last post, and war films on the TV, reading these comic books. I wanted to join the army, and I wanted to join the best regiment I could join, so I joined the parachute regiment. After I'd done 6 years in the parachute.
I'm just sorry. I'm just laughing at the lady's body language, her eyes and her reaction, the one that's just about to fold or just folding her arms in the grey. She looks super unimpressed by what she is hearing. Sorry, she just caught my eye, just her whole body language and the facial expression. So Ben's, like he said, he's about to give, I think he said an understanding as to why people would want to join the military of a young age. So anyway, let's crack on.
I applied to join the Special Air Service. I was sent up to Baghdad to work in a special ops team up there. And our job was to capture high-value targets. And these were people that we decided were running the insurgency. So you're in your home, you're in your bed, everyone's asleep. And all of a sudden, there's a huge explosion, either in your front door or in the wall of your house. There's a huge explosion, there's a huge noise, there's dust all in your house. And before you've worked out what's going on, there's 20 armed men have come through the hole, and you can hear them moving through your house. And they're coming up the stairs, they're in your room. And you'd be dragged out of your bed, your mum and dad would be dragged out of bed, the sister would be dragged out of bed, and then we'd split you up. We'd take all the males of military age, which is anyone 16 upwards, and we'd put them in a room, they'd be held at gunpoint. Your sister and your mother, they'd be taken into another room, held at gunpoint. My job at this point was to go through your house and tear it apart. We took all the mobile phones, the money, any weapons we found. We'd take computers, we'd take your birth certificates, your passports, everything. We'd put it into these big bags. We'd have a name and a photo. And it was rarely the case that when we got into these buildings that these people were there. It was someone else. But our attitude was that if they were in this building, they must be guilty of something, because we've been watching this building for a while. We'd put these plastic cuffs around them, put a hood on, and then we'd hand them over to another unit, and then end up in a prison where people were tortured. Cattle prods were used, dogs, water, brutal interrogations, humiliation, and knowing that I was involved in taking these people out of their houses.
Now, I've just heard him talking about what sounds like torture, cattle prods, water. Is that what he said? I'm just going to go back.
But our attitude was that if they were in this building, they must be guilty of something, because we've been watching this building for a while.
And I'm just looking at the lady in grey's body language again. She looks not happy with what she's hearing. And, you know, each to their own, in terms of maybe she's got some experience in terms of this tour that Ben and his team are on, and maybe it's bringing up some not very pleasant memories for her, maybe.
Put these plastic cuffs around them, put a hood on, and then we'd hand them over to another unit, and then end up in a prison where people were tortured. Cattle prods were used, dogs, water, brutal interrogation.
Okay, so he's not saying that's what he is doing. He's saying they're handed over, then they're put into prisons and interrogated, and where torture was used. So again, he's pretty descriptive with regards to, well, not again, but he's sharing his belief around the torture that was used. I'm not saying that it wasn't. It's just, yeah, it's hard to, and I'm not naive to think that torture doesn't happen. But yeah, he's caught. I can understand how he's caught in a hard spot. So he hasn't come out and said that he personally witnessed it, but he's through his belief is that this stuff is what's happened. But pretty descriptive in terms of what he's describing, the cattle prods and all this other stuff that's been used as part of that torture that he's saying that these people went through.
Humiliation, and knowing that I was involved in taking these people out of their houses and then that they were being tortured started to disturb me. You know, the looks on children's faces, the looks on the wives, the men literally pissed themselves, were crying their eyes out because they knew what was going to happen to them. And I suppose it all came to a head for me when the CO came over, and he said that he was worried that we were becoming the secret police of Baghdad. And I looked around, and the buildings that we were living in were the same buildings that Saddam Hussein's henchmen used to live in. And the prisons we were using were the same ones that Saddam Hussein's henchmen had used. And I started to think, well, maybe the people we're picking up were the same people that Saddam Hussein used to pick up. And I said that I wasn't going to go back to Iraq.
I love just his mindset, his questioning of things, him looking around based on what he's describing, the environment that they were staying in, living in the same types of places that Saddam's henchmen are in. Maybe they're picking up the same types of people. Maybe it's now that Saddam's not in power, somebody else is in power, so now we'll call out all of their types of people that were, you know, doing this stuff to us, a tit for tat type thing. You know, it could have been. Who knows? But what I like is Ben's, I guess you call it his critical thinking, and looking at the situation, asking questions and taking on the information and what it was that he was seeing, and also acknowledging how he was feeling, how it was making him feel. That's huge. There's one thing I remember, I can't remember who I heard it from, but oftentimes there's a person that shared, man, it may not have been that person, but they spoke about you'll always remember how you feel. And that comment's always stuck with me. You might forget details, you might forget where you were, you might forget faces, you might forget exact exact details of what was happening or what was said at that time, whether it's somebody speaking to you or whether it's a situation that you're in when you're in there and you're experiencing something that may be happening around you. But something that stuck out to me from the person, or maybe it was persons that shared it, is that you'll always remember how you feel. And that's often stuck with me. There's lots of examples where I can't remember all the details of what was said or who was with me exactly at that time, but I can remember how those things made me feel at that time. When Princess Diana, when I heard that she had died, I actually remember where I was at that time, but I know that there were other people in the gym at Linton Military Camp at the time when I heard it over the radio. Some of them I knew, but I can't remember what we were talking about. But I remember how I felt. I remember how I felt when the Twin Towers, when I come back off patrol. Some of those other details are a bit hazy in some of the words, but I remember how I felt when I saw those. And so things like that, when I heard those words, it just made me remember sort of events and stuff from the past. So no doubt Ben has held on to those feelings because they're hard to lose when you've been in the middle of something like Ben has. So let's crack back on this.
And luckily for me, I thought I was going to end up in prison, but for a whole load of reasons, I was discharged from the army.
Whenever the British soldiers were sent in.
That's interesting, eh? He thought he was going to be sent to prison. I'm guessing for... I think I touched on it earlier in the article piece in terms of not deploying, disobeying orders, whatever the case may be. So I'm sure they probably could have, within their rights, I suppose, of military law. I don't know how that works. Sent him to jail, but it's good they didn't, and that instead calmer heads prevailed, and instead he was discharged, or maybe he was given the option to, or they just looked at it and said, well, listen, if you don't want to be here and deploy on this type of work, then we don't have a place for you. So anyway,
to look for people who were on the internment list. They had an order, and we have actually got a copy of this. If, say, you go in looking for John O'Hagan, and John O'Hagan isn't there, take all males over the age of 18.
You could be talking about Iraq, or you could be talking about Falls Road. Yes. The same things happened. Our people here, and I have to say, speaking for myself, coming and listening to you, like, it always fascinates me how people can join an army and not think they're going to kill people and not think they're going to be turned into robots.
I have a lot of cousins and a lot of nephews and nieces who are brought up in England. And I have to say that there were 6 members of my family in Northern Ireland who was prisoners. I was interned at 16. My nieces and nephews have come to visit me, and they have talked about their friends going to Afghanistan. Now, this is 30, 40 years after we were, like the Ballymurphy massacre, And it was a whole emotion with me, and I was sort of trying to talk to them. It's beautiful children, the father Irish and mother English. The rights and wrongs, you're being used, your country, okay, you love England, you love your friends in school, but they thought that this was a thing they had to do because, their friends did it, they went to school, they're talking about their debts and things. But at 16, you were talking there now about, which raised enough emotion inside me.
I'm glad she mentioned that. She did look not triggered. She looked like she was feeling something, and she spoke about their raised emotion in her, and credit to her for speaking now. That makes sense. I've only heard a small snippet of what she's spoken about and the things that she's witnessed and been through, and her family members and loved ones and that sort of thing, and so credit to her. We'll come back to her to let her finish off, but I just wanted to mention also the other lady before her, so just next to her in the black, spoke about some words to the effect of she can't understand how people think that they can join the army and that they're not going to kill people. That's, at least in New Zealand and Australia, in terms of joining the military and having depending on what's going on in the world at the time, right? It just wasn't, you prepare for it because that's what a defence force and a military is for. And unfortunately, that's one of the realities of a defence force or of a military of any sort, is to prepare to defend, but also train in developing the skill and ability of being able to take life if need be. So I don't think there was ever a thought that we weren't preparing for, or at least for me anyway. I never felt like, I'm just doing this for fun. No, we had it drilled into us from basic training. Like, this is even the role of the infantry, to seek out and close with the enemy, to kill or to capture them, and it carries on for a little bit longer. Those words, they still stick with me now. I still know the role of the infantry. I still understand what that's about, and that's drilled into you from basic training. So I don't. That's her opinion, and that's her perception of it, and that's cool. The other part where she talks about where you don't become robots, or where you think you're not going to become a robot. Maybe, yep. There's probably some validity there in her comments for some people, in regards to some people, and I think she used the term being brainwashed and becoming a robot. My experience, by and large, I never experienced that. I don't think I became a robot. If I had, I would have just marched to the tune of everything my leaders told me to do without question, and or without throwing my toys out of the cot. So, yeah, I don't think the military creates that. Maybe they try to do a good job. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not fair. What they try to do with their training is make sure that you are prepared for what needs to happen. And some of those things, you learn through repetition and through set ways and methods of doing things. And that helps, because it's proven, it's tried, tested and proven, to help those individuals pick up and adopt those skills more efficiently and to be able to apply them. So, yeah, we'll just come back to this lady here and let her finish off. That was just my spiel in terms of what I heard the lady speak about, and now this lady so far.
I'm so back when I was 16 again. You're talking about getting into a house in Afghanistan and children and the fathers and the mothers and the children all got fear. And I mean, you're talking about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was actually 4 o'clock in the morning that the Saracens used to come here. The smell of petrol, the noise, everything stays with us. I mean, I'll be 60 next year. But I mean, that never leaves anybody. Yeah. Our mothers and fathers went through that every single night. Or, maybe 4 sons out of one family, or every second door, it was the same.
I don't think that the...
It must have been terrible, man. You can see it. I can see it and hear it in her voice when she's speaking. And so, massive credit to her for speaking, for sharing some of these very private, personal experiences. And clearly that's why the body language at the start, and I shouldn't have been laughing, but it did catch me off guard. I didn't know, obviously, the trauma that she's been through, that her and her family have been through.
The portrayal of the British military and the portrayal of British military history allows 16 and 17-year-olds to understand what it's really about.
It's different here. It was something that the war came to us. We weren't taught it in the schools the way you were, and it was a different thing. Our communities were invaded.
We were just taught to believe, before we joined the army and when we joined the army, that if I was in a position where I have to kill someone, my country is always the good guy. Yeah. So you could never see the other side of the argument.
I wasn't on the side of right, we were patrolling the streets out there with a big SLR in your hand. You could take an elephant down with people going shopping, and you could stop and search, and people going into the city centre. It was all chicaned off, and you had to get searched to go shopping. That part, I hated that. There's something profoundly wrong with searching people going shopping.
When the guy started talking, like maybe my Republican blood was starting to boil, and I just thought, what the frig am I doing in one pack of Brits, like? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But it was only in listening to him then and seeing where it developed on, then to get to that truth and to that reconciliation and everything else, like we would go and talk to people about our activism and what we did, and I certainly got an understanding really of how other people feel, because of our actions.
I met former British soldiers.
I'm going to pause that there. The reaction piece was in and around Ben's presentation that he was giving, but it was really interesting to hear the other comments, particularly of the females there too, that added their voice, injected their voice, which is great to see and hear from their perspective. But I think I've pretty much covered off on the aspects. There is a follow-up HR podcast, which I have just discovered. It's Ben Griffin with Hugh Kerr again, back on the HL podcast, and it's 6 years after that first interview that I just finished doing the 6 or 7 reactions to. So I'll chip away at that and see what that one is all about as well, and put that one up. So appreciate your time again. If you made it this far, that's just on 30 minutes now, so I'll do a wrap up. But yeah, sincerely appreciate your time. I wouldn't say it's easy, but I can see how and where Ben, and I have a little bit better understanding now of perhaps why Ben on his time on the HL podcast was so persistent in going back to Northern Ireland and the scenarios and the conversations that he was having with Hugh Kerr at the time, and I don't know if comparing is the right word, but discussing Northern Ireland and then talking about Afghanistan and Iraq, and constantly sort of switching backwards and forwards and going back. I could sort of have a little bit of a better understanding. I still stand by my reaction, though, in terms of different times, different politics, different situations, different ROEs, different everything. So it's not a case of comparing apples with apples in terms of if you did this in this time, you wouldn't get away with it, but you can get away with it now. But, you know, if you did it back here, then you couldn't, like, there's no... For the purpose of the conversation that that Ben was having with Hugh Kerr, I don't think there was any benefit in terms of those comparisons or that part of the conversation. And you could see what was happening with Hugh, or I could see and feel and hear it anyway, because of Hugh's experience in Afghanistan, was very different. It was professional. They were doing the things that they needed to do, and so I could understand him challenging Ben's comments and thoughts in and around that. So anyway, lots to digest in that in there, eh? You'll have your own thoughts. Feel free to whack them in the comments. As always, I leave all the comments on. I don't turn them off. I don't try to block anybody's. I don't delete anybody's comments if it doesn't align with my thoughts or other people's. Sometimes people want to go at it in the comments amongst each other if they want to do that. For the most part, though, I don't think there's too much of that on the channel. But hey, each to their own. Everybody's got an opinion. They're just like noses, as I've always said. Everybody's got one, and we are entitled to share it. So again, I just appreciate your time and support. As always, the message is the same. Anybody going through any dark times, challenges, heartache, heartbreak, just encourage you to keep tuning up, keep staying in the fight, keep putting one foot in front of the other, take one day at a time, and know that the sun will shine again, that there are better days ahead. Those better days are closer than you think, and those better days are coming for you. So as always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.